In this video, I'm going to give you a guide to the most common questions that are asked in warehouse operative interviews, and I'm going to show you how you can plan really great answers to these to help you get the job. So let's start by thinking about why you should actually watch this video. So the first thing is, it is really not easy to make up great answers on the spot, to just go into your interview, have 10, 15 seconds to think for each question and just come up with something great. You need to do some preparation. So in order to get the job, you need to tick the boxes that the warehouse are looking for. So I'm going to show you what questions they ask and also the answers that they want and the boxes that they are looking for you to tick to get the job. And by ticking those boxes, your chance of getting the job is going to go up by a lot. I'm going to show you what the most likely questions are so you're prepared. And when you go into the interview, a lot of questions you'll have heard before. And then most importantly, I'm going to teach you how you can answer these questions. So before we look at the questions, I want to just quickly show you how you can fail a warehouse operative interview, the things that you have to make sure that you don't do, otherwise you won't get the job. So the first thing is lack of preparation, and this video will address any lack of preparation by giving you a good set of prepared answers. The next thing is not bringing the documents they ask for. So they will ask you to bring proof of address, they'll ask you to bring passports, they may ask you to bring proof that you've got the right to work in the UK, and if you don't bring those documents, they may actually refuse to interview you. So make sure you've definitely got all the documents and go through the list at least twice. Then if you say you can't work the hours they're asking for, they're probably not going to hire you. So I'm going to show you how you answer those sort of questions to maximize your chance of getting the job. And then if you turn up with overly casual dress, so you should be turning up, smart and professional, business casual, that sort of thing. Overly casual dress could come and hurt you. So let's start by looking at the question. So one question you could get is, what would you do if you damage an item? And the key to success with this question is saying what they want to hear. So they want to hear that you will take responsibility for it. They want to hear that you're not going to conceal it. Any idea that you give them that you might want to hide that or not take responsibility is going to be very bad. And then they are really checking to see that you've got integrity in the way that you act when you answer this. So the things that you say is going to be on this arrow in the middle. So firstly, you want to make it clear that you don't want to do any damage, that you're horrified that any damage would happen. And you, before you even talk about what you do when something's damaged, you say that you're going to work safely and carefully to avoid any damage, that you're not someone that regularly does damage, and that damaging the property is a very bad thing. You want to make that very clear. Then you want to say that if it did happen, not that you think it would happen, but in the event that there was damage, the first thing that you would do is I would take responsibility for that. Then you say that you would immediately report it. So you would let the correct person know that that damage has occurred so that you can deal with it together. Don't give the idea that you're going to tell your manager and that's it. That now that you've told them, it's now their problem. That's not the way to behave, and that's not the way that they want. They don't want people to just say, well, I broke it, now it's someone else's problem, you go sort it out. That's not the attitude they're looking for. And then what you must say is that you would follow the company's procedures and do what you've been told in your training. So you're not going to make up your own policies, you're not going to make up your own procedures, you're going to do exactly what they've told you to do. So they will tell you in your training, if there's some damage, this is what you need to do. And you just say in your interview that you would follow the correct procedure in that case. Some bad answers and some things people say that really ruin this answer is giving the idea that you're not really bothered about it. And that's not necessarily what you say, it's how you're acting. You want to be clear that you're horrified that something's been damaged and that you are feeling responsible for that. Then you give the idea that you invent your own policy. So you say, I would do this, then I would do this, then I would do this, which is not necessarily what you're supposed to do. Say that you're going to do what you're supposed to do. Don't say, I'll pay for it, because that's not the correct policy. And also, what if it was 5,000? Is that something that you're ready to pay for? So that's not a promise you want to make. Then giving the idea that you expect it to happen, or giving the idea that it's not really your problem, that you just pass out onto a manager and they will deal with it. It's key to this question is the taking of responsibility and being clear that this is not something that you want to happen and that you'll follow the company's correct procedures if it were to happen. So that's how you ace this question. Let's go on to the next question. This is probably the most important question to get right in your interview, and that is simply, what times can you work? And if you don't have a good answer to this, they're probably going to employ someone else. So let's look at what they're looking for and what you can say. So they are looking for people who say yes. If they ask about specific times, it's because they care about those times. If they say, can you work at this time? It's because they have in their mind that we need people at that time. They know the schedules, they know when people need to be there. And if you're saying no to times that they're asking for, it's going to reduce your chance of getting the job. You may not be able to work then, and so you wouldn't get the job, and that might suit you. But if you do really want to get the job, you have to be saying yes as much as possible. You have to be open-minded. You have to be open to lots of different times to meet their needs. You want to be showing off flexibility, and I'll show you what you can say in the answers to show off flexibility that really does help your case. And make sure that you give the idea that you take your job seriously. The worst way to answer this, and what you should definitely never do in this question, is say, I can't work this time, I can't work this time, I can't work this time, but I can work all the other times. So if you give them a list of times you can't do, you're basically giving them a list of reasons not to give you the job. So don't spend the time in this question talking about what you can't do. Focus always on what you can do. So some ways to answer it, some really best answers, and you can get as many of these in as possible. You could start by saying, I'm available for all advertised hours. If the job advert has specific hours on it and you applied for that one, then saying that you can work the ones on the advert basically means you're going to do what we want. You're going to be working when we need people. You could say that you're open to day or night shifts if that is the case. If you're happy to work, for example, nights. Remember, if you check the pay rate, you probably will be paid more for night shift. So you may want to earn a little bit more, and you may want to volunteer that. And that could be quite helpful and help your chance of getting the job. But if you don't want to work night shifts, I wouldn't mention night shifts. You don't have to bring up, I don't want to work night shifts, but you just sort of basically don't talk about it unless they specifically ask. Then you could say you're happy to increase hours during peak time. So, for example, around Christmas, the business is going to be extremely busy. So, you're going to be able to increase your hours, do more hours. And that's a good thing to say because it's a big part of a warehouse business having really busy times. And if you're happy to increase your hours and, of course, get paid more, then you can volunteer that as well. You can say that you're open to overtime. You may be offered overtime. You may not be offered overtime. If you are offered, you'll get paid more. And so you could say in your interview that you're open to work more hours than are on your contract if they're available. You could say that you're happy to help out when needed. So if you need to work a few extra hours and they're available, you're happy to jump in and do that. And you could say, I can usually work at short notice. And if the warehouse operates 7 days a week or 6 days a week, you could say that you're happy to work some weekends. And so it's volunteering as much flexibility as you can, and that massively helps your chance of getting the job. So basically, say as many of those on the list as you can and focus on trying to say yes, and don't highlight any times that you don't want to work because that's just giving a reason not to hire you. You want to be focusing on what you can do. The next one is kind of an awkward question. It's quite annoying when they ask this, and it's difficult to make one up on the spot. So you want to have a basic answer in your head ready to go. So they may ask, where do you see yourself in a year or in 5 years' time? And there's a wrong way to answer this, and there's a right way to answer it. So if we start with the wrong way, so things that are totally irrelevant. They don't want to know that you plan on buying a house, starting a family. That's not, it's very nice to you, and I'm sure it's very important to you, but it's not what they want to hear in a job interview. Then answers that don't have any sort of learning or improving, that don't give the idea that you're constantly getting better and better at your job. Or if you give the idea that you're quitting warehouse work, or you see this as just a 1 year job until you can get a better job because you applied for this job, but you think it's rubbish and you want something better. That is really the wrong attitude to have in an interview. And so definitely do not ever talk about anything outside of warehouse work, because that's not what you want to be talking about in the interview. Don't talk about leaving the company in the interview to get a job there. That's going to go down really badly. The positive things to say, you want to focus on having a plan that's reasonable, that is focused on your development. So what could you do to be even better at your job as a warehouse operative? What are the progression opportunities? And you want to have a basic plan. You don't have to basically have it sketched out month by month and have a really detailed plan, but you just want 3 or 4 things to say to talk about what you're looking at doing in the next year to 5 years. And so I'll give you some inspiration of some things that you could say. So you could say that you're interested in, a year's time or 5 years' time, once you're more experienced and you really know the company, to be someone that they could go to help train new staff. You may say that you're interested in taking on some leadership. You don't even have to say what leadership, but in 5 years' time, you'd hope that you had some extra leadership responsibilities. You could say that you want to get a forklift license. Forklift licenses are quite in demand. People that have got them are very in demand in the warehouse industry. So getting that could up your pay, up your skills, and that's a real positive thing to say. You may say that you want to be a team leader or supervisor in 5 years' time. Or if you're not looking to progress, that's fine. And the phrase you use is you want to be really outstanding at my current role, that you want to be an absolute expert on where everything is in the warehouse, someone that's super reliable, and someone that is really very, very effective at their job. And that's your focus, is on being absolutely brilliant as a warehouse operative. And so there's how you answer the year or 5 year plan if they ask it. And the focus is on development, what you're going to do to get better, and not talking about leaving the business or leaving the industry. So that's how you ace that question. Another question they may ask towards the beginning of the interview is a simple one, which is, tell me about yourself. And this one is a wasted opportunity for a lot of people. You don't get a good answer if you try and make it up. And I'm going to show you just a simple strategy that you can use to answer this question. And when you follow this, you'll get a really detailed, brilliant answer that will show them that there's a lot of skills that you have to offer the company. So you start by talking about experience. Then you talk about qualities, and you would think about what's important to working in a warehouse. I'm going to list the qualities that you could say, and you can say that you've got those. Then you think about your interest in the role, and you finish the question by explaining why you actually want to get this job. So you start with your experience. So what's your past work experience? So you would list the jobs that you've had and what you did in those jobs. You would focus most on any jobs where you've worked in a warehouse, done lifting, or worked in logistics. So if you have that experience, you'll spend most of your time talking about those jobs. Then think about any skills that you've got. Have you done any training, like manual handling training would be quite useful. If you got any licenses, forklift license, driving license, and any qualifications that you've got, you can definitely mention that. If you've got maths and English qualifications, that's going to be quite interesting to them. So definitely mention the grades and qualifications that you have on top of your other skills and experience. Then quality. So here's some things that you can say, which are the skills that they're looking for. So you could say you're highly reliable. If you've got a track record of being on time for work, say that. That's really important. If you're quite physically fit and you can match the demands of the job, you're going to be moving around a lot, lifting, walking. And so fitness is going to be quite helpful in making you good at your job. So I always get the job done. It's a good phrase to say. Say that you're a team player, and also say that you're easy to work with. That's a good quality. You don't want to work in a company with people that are difficult to work with, and they're trying in this interview process to not employ people that are going to be trouble. So if you're easy to work with, that's going to be quite reassuring to them that they're employing someone who isn't going to be trouble. And then interest in the role, dead simple. So you think about what do you or what would you enjoy about working in a warehouse, and say the things that you enjoy, having an active job, for example. Then why do you like the company? Why have you chose this company? You might want to have a sentence about, I want to work for this company because, finish that sentence and say why you've applied. And then you could say something very simple, like, you see, warehouse work's a very important job and it provides an essential service to the country. And that's one other reason why you've wanted to work in this industry. So the next one is related to the tell me about yourself, and you can follow a similar procedure and actually just build on your answer there. And it says, why do you want to work as a warehouse operative? So let's look at how you can actually plan an answer. You might want to bullet point out an answer, or just plan one out in your head ready, because when they ask this, if you don't have a good answer, it's going to hurt your chance of getting the job. So the first thing you really want to think a lot about is, why would you enjoy working in a warehouse? Is this a job you've done before and you've really enjoyed it? Do you like the active nature of the work? Do you like to be kept busy? Is this something that's just perfect for you and you want to talk about that? Then think about, how does it match your skills? Are you quite physically strong? You're good at lifting things. You're good at moving around. You're very well organized. You're a hard worker. These are things you could talk about. And then, does it link to your previous experience? Think about all the jobs you've had in the past that are very physical jobs, and talk about that you've got the experience, you've done similar work, you've got what it takes, you can handle the demands of the job, and you can talk about that. And whatever you do, you ought to be enthusiastic. So if they ask you this and you're pretty dull and uninterested, it's going to go down pretty bad. So you ought to be really enthusiastic when you're answering these questions. So some more inspiration about things you can say. You can say that you enjoy working in a team. Warehouses have huge teams. You're going to meet loads of people. You can say you enjoy that. You see that you're applying to a very large company and you think there's going to be opportunities to grow with that business and to progress over time when you earn that progression. You may know someone who works at the warehouse. You don't have to name them. I would suggest you actually don't name them. You can talk about people that you know who do work there without naming them, of course, and say what they've said about the company and why they've said this would be a good place for you to work and why they've recommended that you do this job, and you can share in their positivity. You could say that it's a growth industry and you're interested in working in a big growing industry. People are shopping online more and more and more, so there's going to be lots of opportunities in this sector. Then think about the positives of this employer, say a few good things about why you want to work for this company, and then you can say that it's really important to you to have a busy and active job to keep fit. And so these are some things you can talk about. And that's how you just fly through the why do you want to work as a warehouse operative. So just pick some of those things on there, focus on what you'll enjoy, how it matches your skills, talk about your previous experience, and you can absolutely ace this question. So let's move on to questions about fitness and lifting. These are often questions they use to check. So, of course, if you can't lift things very well and you have, serious problems with your fitness, it's going to be very difficult to do this job. So they may ask you questions like, will you be able to manage the physical demands of the job? And in this question, you want to convince them that, yes, I can manage this job, because some people can't. It's a tough job being a warehouse operative, and they want to be convinced that you're going to be able to put up with the physical demands of it. So you need to be able to walk for perhaps as high as 8 to 12 hours a day on a long shift. You could be walking. I've heard stories of people walking 7, 8, 9, 10 miles in one shift. Are you able to do that? You need to think about that. You want to say to them that I maintain a decent level of fitness. You don't have to be an Olympic athlete, but you want to have a reasonable level of fitness for the job. If you do any sports, this is a good time to mention it. That helps with the story about having good fitness. And then any experience of physical jobs. If you've worked in jobs where you're lifting, carrying, moving, or any construction or things like that involve lots of physical work and physical labor, mention those and say, I've done this before in this job and in this job and this job, I can manage it. And then you might want to say you've got no medical issues that would prevent you from doing the job if that's the case. They may ask about safe lifting as part of health and safety. So you could say that you're physically able to lift packages if that's the sort of warehouse you're working in. Or you can say more generally that you're able to carry typical warehouse items. That's a good phrase to use. If you've got experience of doing training, you've actually been trained how to lift things in a previous job, you can say, I've completed manual handling training. And then safe lifting technique is all about assessing. So you look at the item that you've got to lift, you work out, can I lift this on my own? Do I need to get someone else to help me and lift it as a pair? How heavy it is? You figure it out. Before you pick up something, you think about, are you able to lift it? Then you look and think about your grip. Do I have a good grip on this? You adopt a stable position so you're not going to fall over, legs wide apart idea. You make sure you've got a clear path. If you have to lift it between A and B, you don't want to have lots of things in your way. You want to check and plan out your route before you lift it. And then, of course, you don't bend down and lift it using your back muscles. You want to use all your muscles and use a safer lifting technique so you're not going to hurt your back. And so there's things that you can talk about if they ask about lifting. So stick to safe lifting techniques and show that you know what you're talking about. And that's how you do it. Let's move on to the next one, which is some quick fire questions. So I've got 3 questions that they can ask, and there are right answers and wrong answers. I'm going to show you what the best answers are. So they may ask you, do you have holidays booked? And the fact that they're asking this is because this is going to be important to them. They might be short-staffed. They might need people to start very soon. And unfortunately, if you say yes, it's going to go perhaps quite badly. So the ideal answer is no. If you want to get this job, you want to be starting when they need someone to start. If you say, I can't start for 3 weeks because I'm away on holiday for 3 weeks, then if they're desperate for staff right now and you're not going to take the job, then they might offer it to someone else. So no is the best answer to this. Then the question could come up, when can you start? And there's 2 answers to this that I recommend. There's one answer which is probably the best answer, and then a second answer which is perhaps more realistic depending on your job situation. So the first answer is, I'm available to start at your earliest convenience. So if you could start tomorrow, or you could start next week, or you could start as soon as possible, you basically say, I'm available to start at your earliest convenience. So you give them the power and the influence over that you can start whenever. You want to start as soon as possible, but you'll work to meet their business needs. And of course, they're obviously got a job opening, so they need someone. So the start date would be pretty soon. Then you could say, if you've got a job already, you can start immediately after I've completed my notice period. So if you've got a job now, you probably can't just leave on Monday and start straight away. You might have a 2 week notice period or however long your company says. And so you're going to have to start after that. And of course, they know if they're employing someone who's got a job that that's just standard. That is exactly what they'd expect. And that's a fine answer. So choose the one that's best suited to you, and that's how you can answer it. The next one is, can you work weekends? And you might not like what I'm going to say as the answer to this. The best answer is, of course, yes, because you have to read into this. Remember with the tick boxes. They've asked this for a reason. They have probably got weekends in mind, which is why they decided when they were planning their interview questions to ask every single person, can you work weekends? Because they're using that to make their decision. That's part of their decision process for who they're going to hire. So if you say yes, your chance of getting the job go up. If you say no, your chance of getting the job go down. But if working weekends is something that is an absolute no for you, then you do need to answer no, but it may reduce your chances of getting the job somewhat. So just be aware of that when you make your decision about how you answer it. Yes, the best answer, but it's up to you ultimately. And then before we finish, as a bonus, at the end of the interview, they may ask, do you have any questions for us? And if you say no, it's very bad. It looks terrible at the end of the interview to not have any questions. So here are some suggestions of some questions that you may want to ask at the end. So one that is really quite helpful, and you probably want to know the answer to anyway, is, can you tell me about the next steps in your recruitment process? Which is basically saying, when am I going to find out if I've got the job? And they'll say, we'll call you at the end of the day or tomorrow. They'll give you some indication about when you'll find out, or if you have to go for any other tests. And you probably just want to know that in general. Then you could ask, can you tell me more about the team and the organization you have here at this warehouse? You may, of course, be interested to know that. You may ask, what opportunities could there be for me to upskill and develop here over the next few years? You may be able to have a conversation about getting a forklift license, for example. You may learn about people that have started as warehouse operative and are now in slight leadership positions, team leaders and that sort of thing. And you can learn about those careers and express an interest in being someone who's ambitious and progressing. You could say, what is your favorite thing about working at this warehouse? And when they say what they really like, you can also share in that enthusiasm and say, I would really enjoy that as well. And you can form a bit of a relationship and a bond over your shared interest in that aspect of the work. And then you can, if possible, invent one on the day. So when they're saying things, there may be something you worry about or you wonder about, and then you could ask that at the end. Just double check that it's an appropriate question, and then go ahead and ask that, because it shows that you're listening to what they're saying as well. And there are certain things that you never ask about ever. Don't ask about transfers to another location. So you're being interviewed by senior people at that warehouse. You're trying to staff that warehouse to do their job. And you're asking, can I leave your warehouse and give you a gap in your staffing and go somewhere else? And that's not going to be popular with them. So don't talk about transfers in your interview. Then don't ask about holidays. Taking holidays, very negative. If you ask at the end of the interview, I'd like to go on holiday to Spain for 3 weeks. Can I have, time off just after starting the job? The answer is probably going to be no. And, they'll say, go take that holiday, but not on our time, because you're not going to get a job. And then if you ask about pay, then that's very silly. Find out that before you before you go to the interview, and don't negotiate salary in the interview, because if you're pushing for higher salary, that might put them off. The only time you would ever be able to negotiate salary is after you've been offered the job, but there probably won't be very much scope for negotiation anyway, so it's probably not worth your time. So I hope this was helpful to you. If it was, and you've got your interview coming up, please post in the comments below after your interview what questions you were asked, so we can build up a really great list of all the questions that everybody's ever been asked in warehouse operative job interviews. I'd appreciate if you could like and subscribe if it did help you out. I wish you the best of luck in your interview. And finally, thank you very much for watching.